Today, I am delighted to welcome Brenda Neckvatal to the show. And I've said her name wrong straight away. I was panicking about it and I've done it wrong. Brenda is a relentless, she'll tell me how to do it in a minute. Brenda is a relentless entrepreneur, an international and award-winning human results professional, and a three-time best-selling author. Not only does she help business leaders get the people side of their business right, but she is also a specialist in crisis management, government contracting, HR compliance, and a mentor to rising entrepreneurs, business leaders, HR champions, and professionals. She's been featured in Forbes, Fast Company Inc., as well as US News and World Reports. And she started out as a HR sprout after solid 14-year career in retail management. We'll find out about that. And so, Brenda, welcome to the show. I'm butchering your intro there.
Oh,
I'm
that's
sure
all right.
you can give me a bit more detail. Like I say, welcome to the show.
Thank you. We'll just blame it on the cycle in the moon. That's all right. But thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
It's great to have you on. And just tell people a little bit more about the background, sort of where you're from, what you do, those sort of things. Just a bit more
Yeah,
about who you are.
yeah, absolutely. So I'm over here in the United States. I'm over on the East Coast, in Virginia, right in the Virginia Beach area. So for reference and context, I'm about a good 3 hour drive south from Washington D.C. Um, so it's, politics can get a little spicy down here just as well as it does everywhere else in the United States. And Lord knows they are loading the pepper right now. So, with our new president. So, yeah, no, I've been practicing in the field of human resources now. Combined total within my entire career is about a little over 30 years. A lot of the stuff that I did in the retail industry prior to actually permanently taking a seat and going that trajectory had a lot to do with it. So the big thing that I've always focused in on, it wasn't planned. It just kind of happened that way. It turned out that I had a very, very strong knack of being able to, and there's my director of security in the background, being able to actually identify patterns and patterns of behavior. So when an employee would do something that was outside of the lines, my ability to actually figure out, like, I can look at a project and I can literally go backwards to the starting point and figure out how do we get here. And go backwards. So, like, what do they call that? Remanning it, right? So I can do the same thing with human behavior as well, because I've seen it so many times, and it's amazing how many times people repeat the same thing even though they're not in the same situations, right? Like if I see, John, Jill, and Jack doing this, and it's consistent, I can tell you that Mike, Nick, and Sam are likely to do it as well. Right? It's that kind of thing. It's like figuring that stuff out. So I refer to my phone as the Hey Brenda hotline. So when that thing goes off and I have somebody that says, "Hey Brenda, I got a person or I got a man, or I got an employee who's blah 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 blah." So it's usually like a consistent series of the same kinds of things over and over and over and over again, which has helped me figure out, again, patterns. That way I can best advise my clients, right? Probably a really good example is we had, I posted it on my social media today. Mark had called up and he had an employee that she's really good, but the problem is that she magically seems to take him round and round and round in circles when it comes to him holding her accountable. And he stops and he's thinking to himself, like, is this me? Like, am I going crazy? Like, have I lost my touch? And I'm like, no, you just happen to be up against somebody who's really good at doing that. And by the way, here's how you interrupt it, right? And so he was trying to do other things that he quickly found out weren't working. And instead of making the matter worse, which is one of his biggest fears, he reached out, gave a call, and he says, "Hey, can we talk through this?" And I'm like, "Yep, absolutely." And so that's where I wound up finding myself becoming, being really good at crisis management. I'm just one of those weirdos that just seems to know what to do. And so I'm not afraid of making a decision. And an executive decision, I'm not even afraid to tell executives to not do something that they shouldn't be doing, right? So, in a helpful manner, because it's all about really taking care of their interests as well as the employee. So it's finding that delicate balance between the two. That is always a challenge. So, wait, he's
It's
got,
interesting with the securities there.
yeah, he's all full of it right now.
With just think about the sort of HR side of it. It's something that is it's an interesting dilemma, isn't it? Because obviously the HR organisation is there for the organisation, and whilst there is an element of employee protection and support there, but fundamentally they are there to serve the organisation. So that's where their priority has to be. And as a professional, it must be really difficult to hold that balance between the two, between those individual priorities, because obviously it's the company that is the king, if you like, in some ways. But how have you found that sort of thing when you've had situations where it put you in a bit difficult question to start off with, putting you in that conflict, which I'm sure you have, or people you've dealt with who are in that conflict position?
Yeah, so I look at it from a very strong ethical standpoint. And, we have to look at, first off, we have to look at the whole situation. And if we don't have, like, if we're not asking good questions, we're not getting good answers, which means that we're making decisions off of incorrect, incomplete, or even bad information. And we can't have that happen. Sometimes one minute detail that a manager has not shared can literally change the entire situation. I mean, they would think like it has no bearing, but you'd be surprised that more often than not, the ones that they think don't have a bearing actually are the missing piece of the puzzle. Um, but when like I'll give you an example. Years ago, this is a long time ago. I had a CEO. We had an employee that we caught lying and intimidating intentionally another employee, and the CEO has a zero tolerance for something like that, and as do I, right? But he immediately wanted to fire him, and I said, look, here's the deal. I strongly believe, first off, let's take a look at the situation for what it is. You basically have a bully that's just trying to intimidate a younger employee. But you know what? The guy doesn't have much of a spine, which is the whole reason why he's being a bully. And nobody disagreed with that. We all know him to back down from levels of authority. And I said, I honestly think there's two things that we can generate from this. I don't think termination really is the first thing that we should be considering. The first thing that we should consider is, first off, giving him a chance to rectify this and change it, because the guy has institutional knowledge. He does produce really good quality work, but you know what? There's nothing wrong with us letting him feel the pressure of his mistake for a little while, to give him a moment of pause and realize that he screwed up. And if he can turn it around, great. In addition to that, we really don't have a lot of documentation on his prior performance, and I think we might be up against a couple of challenges. So I really don't want to go there if you guys are open to that. And they said, well, what do you recommend? And I said, well, first off, like I said, we allow him to feel the pressure of his decisions, which basically means is that the company goes silent overnight. In other words, because he and his boss had a really close relationship, I said he and the boss don't get a chance to talk. He sits there in quiet, has a little adult timeout to realize he's really screwed up, and he is kind of looking at his career down the barrel of a gun. But we have no intention, and there's nothing wrong with giving somebody a moment of pause to experience that. So when he came back in, so they agreed. I said, but I do recommend that we document this as a final warning. In other words, we're not tolerating this ever again. He's going to have a long road to hoe to fix the problem, but this isn't our problem to fix. This is his. He created this monster, and he has every opportunity to actually rectify it. He's going to eat a lot of crow, and I think that's a really, really good dose of medicine. So the CEO thought about it for a few minutes. He goes, you know what? He says, I really want to let go of the guy. He says, but I really like your approach to this. I said, all right, then we're going to go in. Here's our plan. We sat down with them, and the very first thing, and you could just tell the man was sweating bullets, right? And I told him, I said, look, I'm not going to have you sit here wondering what this conversation is going to lead to. I'm just going to tell you right now, we're not terminating you. He's like, oh, thank God. I said, however, that comes with a price tag, and that's what we're going to talk about, right? And so, that's what I'm referring to, is doing what's in the best interest of the company and doing what's in the best interest of the employee, right? It's not fair. And some people will use those, like, keeping the employee on the edge throughout the entire conversation to find out whether he's got a job or not. That's not right. Just be upfront, be direct. Hey, listen, we're not terminating you, but you're going to fix your problem, not us, you. Right? You've damaged your working relationships here, but you can turn them around. And I told him, I said, I have every confidence in the world that you can do this. I said, and the reason why is because I've seen it firsthand, you know? So I said, you're a smart guy. You've got the right kind of pizzazz. So let's, we're going to give you an opportunity to do this, but just understand if you pull this stunt again, we're done. And he goes, yes, ma'am. And a year later, he's like, he came back and he says, I got to tell you something. He says, I know the CEO wanted to fire me because his boss told him so. And he said, the fact that you went to bat for me, I didn't expect that at all. And I said, well, look what you've been able to accomplish. I said, people are now feeling more comfortable around you. They trust talking to you. You have a better relationship with the very person that you were messing with. I said, this isn't us that did it. He said, this is you. He says, yeah, but you taught me the hard lesson. And he says, and I can't begin to tell you how much I appreciate that. So sometimes adults, we kind of need a hard lesson every now and again, especially when we go that far out of bounds.
Yeah, it's interesting because the in some ways it's easier for an organization and for lots of organizations, and performance management is an interesting topic that you could spend several hours talking about, but it's easier to get rid of someone. Well, there's two ways. Either one way, people ignore it and just let the behaviors carry on. That's an easy way, because if they're a high performer, then the justification's there. Or, as you say, you knee-jerk and get them out the door, because then you don't have to mess about. You just need to make sure that you've got the right piece of paper or put a compromise agreement in, or whatever you do.
Yeah.
Whereas actually, the longer-term benefit for both parties could be that investment, as you've done there, to try and bring that, coach that person, get them through. You get the company gets the benefit of that knowledge, that person, and a good person there, and that person gets the chance to be able to redeem themselves and be a good part of the organization. So but it's hard to do, isn't it, as an organization, because especially with emotive subjects like that, where bullying is really, really, I think it's always been in the workplace. I think it's called out now, obviously, for lots of different reasons. It's actually called out now, but it is a difficult topic, because it's immediately you think, right, that's just not, you can't carry on with that. But then it's all about those subtleties of what the actual resolution needs to be, isn't it?
Yeah. And you have to take the person into consideration as well. You have to determine whether this person and their prior performance and their prior behavior and their consistent behavior is actually telling you, is this person, able to go through that level of rehabilitation, self-rehabilitation, or are they in the category of they're not a matter of if, they're a matter of when you want to get rid of them, right? And in this case, this guy wasn't like this. He was he was always messing with people. He's always funning with people. He's always pulling their leg. He's a jokester, right? The man did not have a malicious bone in his body, and we know that. Then if you've got somebody who has a little bit more of that narcissistic personality where they're not happy if everybody else is, happier than them, or they're constantly seeking external validation of some kind, and they're just like high drama, high maintenance. There's a certain thing that they don't get. And that is that their actions or what causes where they are today. This guy has always known that his actions create his environment, because he'll always clean up the joking part with you. Well, when he came out in our conversation and he says, well, I was just joking when I said that. And I'm like, no, you weren't. And he knew I had him, So when you do that, when you call that person out that has that really true, strong ego challenge that I was just talking about, you can sit there and say, well, I was just joking. And if you go, no, you weren't. And then they will justify the hell out of it, right? Or you can stop them and say, well, be funnier next time. And then they get the point that, okay, I crossed the line, but that has a very short lifespan. This other person right here totally turned everything around 180 degrees. So it's all dependent upon whether you believe the person is capable or willing to do something like that. And that's all based off of how well you know them and their patterns of behavior and what you see them doing. And if you see them never taking accountability, standing up, fixing something that they knew was wrong, or saying, "Oh my gosh, I totally screwed up," then you know what? You don't have a chance with them, and an exit would have been appropriate. But if they're willing to, if they are relatively somewhat of an adult, they might do it begrudgingly, but they'll do it to correct themselves.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
It's that. Yeah, give that. It's not that. Give that second chance. It's behave in the way that is appropriate depending on the situation. And I can get that. The whole thing of joking and bants and sort of stuff that people just don't. You can do it, and you can kind of go, "Oh, hang on, I didn't consider how someone might take it," and like you say, not be. You can have something which isn't meant in the slightest in the way that it's taken, and you kind of got to balance that and work out how you deal with it.
Yeah, and here's a little secret nugget is that employees, good employees, will totally be loyal to your principles and not your preferences, right? So if our principle in this example is that we're not going to stand for that level of you're outside of integrity, you're communicating poorly, we're giving you an opportunity to correct yourself, and if they do it, that reflects positively on us. At first people say, why do they keep this clown around? But then next thing you know it, they see this person stepping up rather than stepping out, and then when they see a noticeable change in behavior, they recognize that, hey, listen, leadership has grasped a hold of the situation and has taken care of it. So, that's the thing is like if we're leading and executing based off of our core values, based off of ethics, then your good employees are going to totally dial right into that. And then they're going to understand that, you know what, at the end of the day, this is, everybody's got their problems. We got our issues. We're perfectly imperfect beings, all coming together to figure this big mess out. But you know what? They're treating us well, they're taking care of business, and they're getting rid of the people that really, are not worth keeping around. That's how employees are going to start looking at you. And, you know, when you hold people accountable to that, believe it or not, that's how you actually make a connection with your employees. It really is. People say, well, you got to connect with your employees. It's like, that's not about trying to win them over. Your employees, your good employees are going to connect with you again based off of your values, based off of your ethics, and, not your preferences. Because if you're inconsistent, then they're going to say, like, well, one day they're doing this, one day they're doing that. Those are preferences. But if you're consistent with everything that you do, every decision you make within your values, your employees are more apt to connect with you over that because you're dependable, you're predictable. They totally understand where you're coming from. They may not always agree with it or like it, or when it gets applied to them, it may seem like a little bit of out of fit, but there's nothing wrong with that, right? You stand firm, you stand your ground, and they know where they stand with you. And when that happens, that's how you make that professional connection. And that's what it is. We need a professional connection with our people, and that happens in a number of different ways.
It's really important from what you said there was around setting expectations and setting boundaries and that's where I've seen in organisations where there's a set of things plugged on the wall, but
Yeah.
they don't mean a lot, and
Yeah.
you can't judge them on where the boundaries are. And I think the thing is then is there's no boundaries set or typical behaviours that the organisation's there. People will adopt their own and go to another talk about culture generally, but culture in organisations isn't what the management make it anyway. It's the people and the behaviours when the management aren't there that is the culture of your organisation. And I suppose I think it's where people don't have those boundaries set. It's harder because you, as an individual, you hold back a little bit, or and too far, or you're going to go that way, and without that guidance, it's kind of you're guessing. So it makes it really difficult. And I think I've heard lots of things, and take it to the audience, the project management community. I think we're very much um, in a difficult management position where you're coming into an organisation or work within the organisation where you don't quite often you don't have direct control or direct management accountability for the people that you're directing on a day-to-day basis. And where there is poor behavior, performance issues, whilst you can call it out, you're not the one who necessarily can deal with it. And I found that quite a challenge, because then it's kind of how do you filter that behaviour into another area, but also maintain I've got to deliver my project. So if I get rid of that person, whilst they might make my project better if they're causing trouble, but I still need them to do it. And then someone will say, well, that's the person you've got. Have you seen that sort of thing? And that if you're talking to my audience of project managers, what sort of view would you be saying? What kind of things would you say for them to think about?
So you started going down the path of expectations, right? Expectations are some of the best things that you can ever set. And, like sometimes, like, first off, expectations should never be assumed. They should always be clearly articulated. And sometimes, like, your expectations may even have to be a little negotiated. So if you're looking at project management, it's like, hey, listen, I need this thing done by Friday at 5 o'clock, right? And then you may have somebody that all of a sudden is dealing with an absolute blow up. And they say, well, hey, listen, I got like 7 other things that are due Friday at 5 o'clock. Can I get this thing to you at Monday, 8 a.m.? Yeah, sure, not a problem. That's the new expectation, right? The boundary didn't move. It was just a time thing that changed, right? The expectation still is that thing has to be done, and it has to be done within a time constraint. But what happens is that leaders, or you may not have a leadership title, but if you're leading a project, if you're leading an effort, you still have to have reasonable boundaries and expectations, and they don't mean a thing unless you actually back them up. There's got to be support to that, right? So one of my old teams, oh, they were so funny. I'll give you an example here. And we had this it was a long conversation one day over pizza that we had this. And everybody started laughing. They said, we always know where we stand with you. And I'm like, well, that's a really good thing, but how do you know that? And they said, well, we know when we're getting close to like your boundary, when somebody says something and you're like, seriously? Like it doesn't make sense. And it's just like, where did you pull that one out of? And so we know when something starts to aggravate you, is you always say, seriously. And now I'm laughing, right? Because I'm like, oh my gosh, I do that all the time, right? So it's really funny because like where I live right across the water from the largest naval station on the East Coast, which is Norfolk Naval Station, right? And so any ship that's in a harbor, of military wise, will always have a set of 2 boundaries, or two buoys. One is an orange set of buoys. Those are your warning buoys. And that's furthest away from the stern. And then about 15 feet away from that are the white buoys. So the orange buoys is your last chance to make a good decision, right? Your white buoys, if you cross that white buoy, you're going to get tagged with a bullet. It's as simple as that. They're going to take you out. That's just the Navy. Every Navy does something like this. This is what ours does, right? So somebody was joking with me. Her husband was in the Navy. She goes, yeah, you seriously is like the orange buoys that you said. So we got into this whole conversation. And somebody said, yeah, but you know what? When you hit the white buoys with Brenda, she just tells you, she goes, we're not going there. I'm laughing. And I was red in the face. And some woman, we were joking around and laughing, and this one woman yells out, she goes, watch it, you're getting close to the white buoy, and it was just hilarious. So, they know my boundaries. They know it's like, hey, when I say seriously, it's just like, okay, we're now in the danger zone. And then when I've had it, it's like, yeah, we're not going there. Like when it's inappropriate, it's out of context. You're sitting there trying to pull one over me, and I'm calling you out on it. It's like, that's it. You're not able to go past me on this one, right? But even still, when I set expectations with the team, and this is what I teach people, it's like when you set an expectation with somebody, understand that people who have more difficult personalities, the reason why they push back on that is something is in there where they're afraid to fail. But not only are they afraid to fail, they're also afraid to be called out as a failure. So what do? They flare up, they push back, they create drama. And those are the individuals that have some of those narcissistic tendencies, or they could people that really need to have validation. And when you ask them for specifics, like, okay, so help me understand, what is your concern on this? They can't give you anything solid. It's just drama. It's round and round and round and round and round, right? That's their ego coming out. So if you understand that, if you're dealing with something, if they come back with something substantial to say, well, if we do it this way, there's 3 steps that are going to wind up getting avoided, and it's going to create a mess over here, and it's actually going to wind up making it late going to this way. They're giving you something articulate and substantial. Now you know you got something to work with. And it's really, this is simple stuff when you get really good at hearing it. It's either going to be this or it's going to be that. You're either going to be dealing with ego, or you're going to be dealing with a real problem, which is something that they cannot solve on their own. Otherwise, it's their ego that becomes an obstacle.
It's interesting because I have had conversations with people over the years of trying to get a kind of straight answer from your project manager. You're always looking for the have you finished yet? What's the task update? And how you can go around a loop around someone not giving you a clear view of, I think it'll take this long and I'm this far through. And that sort of, you ask for for that kind of statistic and you get a 4-minute explanation of why they can't give you that statistic.
Yeah.
And I've never thought of it. Actually, I saw your post on LinkedIn. I never thought of it, but of it being essentially being a method of deflecting from answering the question
Yes.
for whatever underlying reason, whether they're sitting there and they're in the meeting and they're going, "Oh crap, I never thought that. He's asked me a question I didn't think he was going to ask me. I'm paddling," or it's someone, as you say, consciously just don't want to do that. And I think, unfortunately, I think most of the times when I've been involved, it's been the former rather than the latter, rather than anyone consciously doing that. But I've never thought about the fact that, yeah, that could be, that behaviour is about avoiding losing face, isn't it? And
It
being
is.
seen to fail.
Yeah, and
Um,
it's a really hard thing to navigate. And matter of fact, in this, I'm going to give your listeners a gift, a free gift. And I'm going to give you a sneak peek right now on what this free gift. So I actually have 3 phrases that I've used consistently for well over 20 years. They are magnificent. They work and they will help navigate some of this. So like what you were saying, right? Somebody gives you a 1-minute chasing their tail type of answer. It's very easy to come back and say, okay, well, help me understand why that happened. Or help me understand why this isn't being done. Help me. And then they start doing the chase. And then the things they say, well, this thing came up. I'm like, okay, so help me understand why that thing came up. And what's happening is that you're not letting them off the hook. That's also another form of accountability, because that's what they're doing. They're just trying to get you off of their back because they're either unwilling to tell you something, they're hiding something. And if you don't listen more and talk less, what's going to happen is that you are going to be, without even realizing it, at fault for silencing them, because you're talking more instead of getting them to talk and give you the answer. And they're going to find comfort in hiding behind that.
I feel like I've done that in sessions before now,
It's
where I've
easy to do.
not done that simple, not been that 4-year-old conversation is a kind of what popped in my head there of why. Of what, I mean, you talk to a 4-year-old there, why is the sky blue? Well, because there's why. Why is that happen? Why is that? And that's that curiosity kind of conversation, isn't it? Around, yeah, digging a little bit deeper. I know I have let people off because I've gone, it's just going to take ages for this conversation.
Yeah, and you know what? And some people also,
I'll pick it up later, and then I don't pick it up later, and then it
yeah,
bites me in the ass. So
yeah,
yeah,
and you know what? A lot of people also think that if I apply, and it's an instinctual subconscious thing. If I start to apply pressure by being the one that talks the most, it's going to squeeze that information out of there. And in fact, what it does is you're just putting them into a box where they don't have to say anything at all. You're giving them the out. Yeah.
that's really tonight's call was worth it.
And but these are and the thing is that somebody thinks that they're doing something the right way, but it's just, one, they don't know who they're up against,
Yeah.
and number two, they may not deal with that kind of personality on such a regular basis, or now it's been introduced into the environment and nobody knows how to deal with that, when in fact it's always seems to be the same. And this is a lot of the stuff that I work with my coaching clients on, is when I get that call from that Hey Brenda hotline, right? And then what they're trying to, in fact, do what they think is right without realizing what they're doing is creating more harm rather than good. And believe it or not, you can actually build a trusting relationship with somebody who's a raging pain in the backside, because it's how when you meet them where they are and you don't allow them to push you around, but you're not nasty about it. They may resent the fact that you're not picking up what they're laying down, but you're still maintaining your trust. Like, hey, listen, I know you can do this. I have every faith in you that you can make this happen. Right? Go out and get it done. And if you have problems, come find me and I'll help you out.
Yep, that's powerful as well. You said there was 3 things you were going to give away for free. What was the other 2?
Oh, I have no. So that one thing, and in it has 3 phrases that I will teach you how to navigate. So there's three phases and maybe a bonus. But one of them was that help me understand. I mean, that is like that is my go-to phrase. When somebody comes up, it's like, hey, I got a problem. It's like, okay, great. Help me understand what's going on. I just want to say what's happening, because they're only going to give me the surface stuff. I want them to go deep, because I'm listening for the things that they haven't yet figured out or haven't told me, or I'm listening for how much of this is a problem that I really need to fix, because maybe they just need to get something out of the way, and it could be a light lift on my part, but is it really as heavy of a lift? Because some people will come to you with a problem for something they simply just don't want to do. And we've all run into that. Yeah. Yeah. I did it too early in my career. It's like, and now it's just like, you know what? I really don't want to do this. I just tell them, I really don't want to do it. Do I really have to do this?
Yeah, there's certain things you think, I want to go to bat on because I don't want to do it. And then you sit there and go, I can't be bothered. I'll just do it.
Yeah.
Don't think it's right. I don't think we should do it.
Yeah.
But it's going to cost me so much energy and emotion, and the benefit for me or the organisation is going to get out of that fight that I'll have to put through isn't just not enough. So I kind of just chalk it off as being death and taxes kind of scenario of some things.
Exactly.
Whilst I could be annoyed at it consistently afterwards, you kind of just get on with it and go, right, I accept it, or just don't do it and get told off.
Yeah. And here's the thing. The power of everyone's leadership, whoever's in a leadership position or leading something, the power of your leadership will always lie in your ability to follow up. And if you don't follow up, a couple things happen. Obviously, what you just said, like, I would much rather not do it and get told off. But here's the thing. When somebody is withholding that and you don't trust but verify that the work is getting done, you as a leader face something that you don't want to face, and that is isolation. They are either isolating you from the problem, or you are accidentally isolating yourself from the situation. That's when you get T-boned. That's when you get surprised, right? And my policy has always been never T-bone your boss, ever, right? If the leader is that toxic to where isolation is starting to become a problem, like, it in your gut. It's one of those things that comes up, but you don't have a word for it just yet. Like emotion, like you got junk in the basement kind of a thing. It hasn't yet worked its way out and you don't have any language to put on it. That's what isolation is. And so all of a sudden you start feeling like, ooh, I don't feel like I'm knowing everything. That's because isolation is present. They're either, you've either isolated yourself from the team, you've pushed them away, or they're not willing to tell you something, and having the team isolate you away from the information is lethal. Because then all of a sudden it's like, why the hell didn't you know that? Why aren't you following up? Now all of a sudden your head is on the block.
Yeah, and I've been in situations, seen stuff like where it's that uh, there's a feeling that there's something that you don't know, where you can't quite get the answers out there from the team to actually tell you what you need to know.
Yeah.
As they assume that that you've got that knowledge. I mean, I've been in situations where I've been into a new area, and they've assumed that I should know all that stuff. And I had one member who was off sick. I was covering for them. I hadn't done that part of the role for a long time, and certainly not in this area. And I did not have a clue about half of the things there. But I wasn't being, or at the time I felt there might be a number of different reasons, but I didn't feel like the team were kind of there with, right, okay, you don't know this stuff, Nige, so we'll help. It was kind of, you're doing that. Why haven't you done that? You need to do that. And that was the kind of coming from the team of things that they needed to get moving forward that no one told me until it was too late.
Yeah.
And I was kind of like,
Yeah, you're flapping like a flag in the wind.
yeah.
Yeah.
And it was really hard because I didn't feel, it felt like I was being set up to fail. And I don't think it was intentional from the team. It was just they were in that situation. They've got this new person there that they've made assumptions on what they do and don't know.
Yeah.
And I think it's really interesting the way that that dynamic of, as you say, the T-boning of your boss and trying to as much as possible give them as much information as you can.
Yeah.
But then you get that whole thing where I've seen it where people don't report the status of a project, say, other than green, because what they get is not help to solve the problem. They get more work to report about the problem.
Yeah.
And as a PM, as a senior stakeholder or senior project sponsor, if someone raising an issue on a project, or even it could be in just a BAU sort of scenario, if by raising that issue it creates a whole raft of more work for those individuals, the little thing in your brain goes there, and you go, "Well, I won't say anything yet. I'll see if I can solve it. I won't say anything yet. I'll see if I can solve it. I won't say, oh crap, it's hit us. Yeah, you know what I mean? They get to that point where it's too late. Whereas
Yeah.
they could have gone, heads up, this is what's going on. And people say, oh, I don't like no surprises. That's my rule there. Until you go to them and tell them, oh, we've got this problem that's potentially coming up. Oh, I don't like surprises. Give me solutions. And you get, I've had managers like that are going, I don't want surprises. You go there with you've got this problem. It's coming down the line. I might need your help. Just go away and give me solutions. And it's like, hang on. That this is preparing you in case I can't get solutions. But the thing is, if in that scenario, if I've got a boss who does that to me, that isolation that you're talking about, I'm going to start doing that. And I've never thought of it or heard it described like that before. I'm going to start, my human nature is going to drive me to go, well, what's the less painful? I don't want to get clipped around the ear every time I warm them up to something. And actually, most of the time, you'll warm people up to something and then solve the problem. So what you end up doing is going, okay, so those getting poked in the ear for those ones, or getting clapped around the head for one big one that might not happen. Our inner chimps just sit there and go, yeah, that's more painful all the time than this one, so let's avoid it, and it saves up that problem for later, doesn't it?
Yeah. So there's two things that happen when you're faced with that. So first off, isolation leads to exposure, right? You explained it without really even, clapping those words together. Isolation leads to exposure. Then all of a sudden, that's when you're left out there trying to figure out, how am I going to fix all of this? Because now I look bad. I feel like a total ass. And I've got people on my team now I can't trust, even though I've told them my expectation is that you come to me and tell me what's going on. The other thing that you're going to start question is how much of this is a hidden agenda, right? So something about hidden agendas, which is pretty awesome. If you think there's a hidden agenda out there, our tendency is to want to run and get through it and push our way because we want to get to the answer solved. Honestly, if you suspect that there's a hidden agenda, all you have to do is just start slowing your roll. You just slow yourself down. And because first off, you're aware something could be going on, right? That's the first thing. And then the second thing is that the truth is actually going to bubble up to the surface. So if somebody is doing something out of Hoyle, you're going to pick up on it when it happens. And at that point, it's like, yeah, when it comes to the big accounting for whatever's going on, the bosses are like, were you aware of this? And I said, you know what? I had a sneaking suspicion that was something going on. And very clearly, this was the deception that came from it. So now you can speak in a very articulate way, in a very confident way, right? Whereas before, you're just trying to like, oh shit, now I got stuff going on and I just got to push my way through there. And I just said a very bad word. So sorry. You can bleep that out later. But it's just kind of, that's what's going on in somebody's mind. Is like, I got to push a needle and figure this thing out. When in fact, all you need to do is just make if you think there's a hidden agenda, just make it known to the powers that be. It's like, something's not right here. I think that there's something else going on. So I'm just going to let the truth surface to it. And then we're going to deal with it that way. At least they know that you're dealing with it. Right. But again, this is that exposure is just, it's not a good place to be. It's not a fun place to be. How do you prevent that from happening? Well, I'm going to give you another little goodie. It's not in my class. I should put it in there, but I'm going to give it to you right now. My favorite question is that when you are in that situation where you're doing your follow-up and you're figuring out that people aren't telling you or doing what it is that they're supposed to do, once it sounds like you're ramping down and you've gotten everything under control, then I always stop and ask the question, okay, so what haven't you guys told me yet? And they can't get out of that question. What haven't you told me yet about this situation? Well, we haven't told you about this yet. Why? Well, we didn't think it was important. Okay, let me help you get this back into focus again. This is where my boundaries are. This is what's important to me. This stuff, not so much. Okay, this is what I need to know. So it's an educational moment at the same time. I mean, you have to constantly not only reinforce your boundaries, but you have to help people understand what's important to you or what's important to the project and what isn't. And that question of, so what haven't you told me yet, is not necessarily a threatening question. It is your last ditch effort to give me important details, because if you don't tell me this, you're going to start getting up against Brenda's white buoy. That's what you're going to face. We're not going there. Okay. You know what I mean? So you're giving them a one last chance out. And that is a very humane thing to do. It's a very compassionate thing to do. And it's a very straightforward thing to do. And honestly, if you really want to, if people want to be treated like adults, treating them in a very straightforward, honest manner like that is probably some of the most loving, compassionate things that you can ever do to somebody.
Yeah, I think it's hard though, isn't it? I think there's that whole thing of trying to be honest and what's it called, radical candor with people and things like that, and then people can take it the wrong way. Well, you can take it too far. Yeah, yeah. It's like radical candor isn't telling someone they're a dickhead. It isn't.
Well,
It's
yeah,
there's a way of doing those sort of things, isn't it?
yeah,
It is about being honest. It's about being um, uh, it, telling the whole thing rather than a partial thing about someone's behaviour or what you have an issue with them, and you can do it. And I do find it really hard, especially with my character type. I want everyone to be friends. To be quite frank, I want a nice, calm, enjoyable, fun time where everyone just gets on and it's all that. Which, as I was talking to another interviewee the other day, Nick Fewings, about teamwork. He's a teamworkologist, is his description, and how getting those teams to work together. And I struggle when there is a big conflict between team members. It plays on. I don't struggle. It plays on my mind. I try to work out what's going on there. Try to understand who is the protagonist, who isn't. And sometimes it's kind of I need to take one person aside and say, "You can't. What you're doing is causing this. Did you realise that?" And it's hard. It's a challenging conversation for me to be able to take someone aside and say, "What you're doing isn't helping you, mate." And to someone else and say, look, they may be behaving like that, but your reaction to that isn't helping you.
yeah.
You're choosing to decide. And there's just, you'll get, and quite often I go through the model of the disc model and go that with people. And I was trying, I've got a new project team to try and talk to people about that, to have that ability to understand other people's default behavior patterns and understand why someone always behaves like that and
Yeah.
not like me. Because if everyone
Yeah.
else behaved like me, the world would be much better, obviously. Except stuff wouldn't get done. People would get missed, and
Yeah.
occasionally I'd annoy someone. So, but like that would be the whole world. So it doesn't, and I think it's hard for us all to spot the fact that we're not. The world isn't perfect if it was everyone was like us.
Yeah.
And those things that you're talking about there, it just really makes me think: it's how do I? Sometimes you can't stop that conflict because you need it, because without it, you don't get best results because you get different opinions.
Yeah. And you know the difference between that type of productive conflict that you're talking about and the destructive conflict? There's one element that enters in that makes it different from being constructive conflict to destructive conflict, and that's judgment. Judgment plays a real big role in our interactions with each other. So when we are executing judgment, people will hear in their minds, like, I don't understand why they do this. I don't get why this is happening. Like, that's judgment, even though you don't have an answer to it, because you're trying to evaluate you're trying to figure out where the wizard is behind the curtain in this, right? And it doesn't unfortunately work. It just introduces judgment, and then the other person will smell that instantaneously. So when you're able to have a conversation, like what you said, you're pulling somebody aside. You know, one of the tricks of the trade that I learned years ago was that, listen, when you do this, this is your outcome. And you can feel that that's not working for you, correct? Right? Okay. But if you were to take a different approach and maybe consider doing something like this, or doing it in this way, or doing it in this way, I think you might have a better outcome. Right? Now, if you opt not to do that, that's 100% completely on you. Just know that if whatever you're doing is interrupting this, and then you're outlining consequences now versus giving them an option, what you're doing is you're reestablishing a boundary. You're doing everything without judgment, but you're also letting them know at the same time, if you decide to take any other route, then ultimately, unless it's a productive route, then ultimately you're going to wind up having to come back and have a harder conversation with me. I really don't personally want that. There wasn't a lick of judgment in any of that. Not one. It's just laying it all out. And that's what I mean by straightforward, right? It's just like, hey, listen, when you're doing this, this doesn't seem to work very well for you. Why? Here are your consequences. But I think if you were to reapproach this and look at it this way, choice is totally up to you. This is not up to me. This is not my problem to fix. But I think if you do it this way, rather than doing this way, give it a try. See how it works for you. If you botch it up, give yourself some grace, fix it again. But again, there's no judgment coming from me on this. I just want you to be successful. And we miss that, because what happens is that if we're not judging something, especially women, if we're not judging something, we're not pointing out that critical element there, because we're trying to avoid something negative to happen. And ultimately what's going to happen is a person is just going to look at you and go, yeah, I really don't like you right now. But they can respect what you're saying when you're doing it without judgment.
It goes that for me. The 50 odd, 60 odd shows, 70 odd shows it'll be soon. And I think I'll probably mention the Manager Tools podcast in every single episode, which is kind of, I've listened to for you, and their feedback model is very much in that vein of ask for permission first. And then when you do this, this is what happens. Can you do it differently? And even leaving it to that level of not even giving suggestions. They're a professional. They know what they're doing. They've got ways of doing it. That's what happens when you do that. People think of you like this way, or people this happens to. And if that person then goes, "Well, I don't care." Well, we go back to our narcissist conversation and the drama creators. You kind of get a view on that. Whereas you give them that option of being able to adjust their behaviour. And it's kind of, if I can give you some feedback about something that's slowing your career, or slowing or stopping you getting the best results out of what you do and out of your interactions, surely you'd want me to tell you, is the kind of conversation with someone that some people will say no. And that's a really useful thing to find out. Some people will say yes and then not do anything with it and just think, oh, that's it. But I think there's that thing of how you, as managers, providing that feedback, providing that support to those individuals who are struggling is critical and hard.
Yeah, it is. And like I've had that conversation with me. I had one of my favorite all-time mentors. He's retired now. We still talk to each other. And we've kept in touch now 25 years almost. Yeah, it's been a long time. And he said to me, he said, "You know what?" He's like, "You are really rough around the edges." I'm like, "You're singing to the choir." Like, I totally get that. He's like, he says, "I like your straightforwardness." He said, "But you have quite an edge to you." I said, "Yes, I do." And he goes, "Oh," I said, "I thought this was going to be harder." I said, "No, I'm well aware of it." I said, "I'm working on softening it." And, it took me a long time to figure this stuff out, right? I didn't have a mentor. I didn't have a leader. I didn't have anybody I could look up to. I never was surrounded by a group of people that knew how to speak to other individuals. And it wasn't until I got into that job where I actually heard that. There are millions and billions of people out there that don't have that. So they're going from what they know. So, it's except for the people that are intentionally doing something, the vast majority of people are just doing the very best that they can with what they've gotten, to model from, you know. And aside from the coaching that I do, my courses are designed to actually give people what I had the fortune of getting, and that is like reevaluating the approach to something that's going to not only help you win, because let's face it, when we're facing that, we want to win it, but it's also going to help the other person win as well. And whatever gaps are existing are just going to help them come together. Because, like I was telling you like earlier, like I had a client by the name of Mark. He called up and he's feeling all these different things. He's feeling frustrated, right? He can't seem to figure out, like, how do I get stung up into this conversation every time I do this? It makes him second guess his leadership, makes him second guess himself, and all of a sudden his confidence is starting to drop, when in fact all he just needs to do is a little tweak, and then be aware of it every time it comes up. That comes with practice, that comes with failure, and it comes with grace.
I think that you mentioned mentorship, and I had a lady I was talking to recently on mentorship, and I've had a mentor when I've gone through some difficult times within, and some good times as well. But being able to bounce, is it just me? Is it me? Onto conversations with someone who isn't involved in the thing itself, I find so valuable, because sometimes they've gone, well, yeah, it's, if you look at it this way, maybe you've got a different view of it, and they
Yeah.
kind of, okay, that's good, that's reset it. Other times it's go, no, it's not you. it's just the situation, or it's just the
Yeah.
person. It's not something I'm doing wrong, or if I've done things, I've tried to do it differently, and they've gone, well, you kind of done everything I would have done. I mean, this is people who've done very well in the organisations, and I think it's, as project managers, I think it's very important to have that, and I draw it to the audience, of to have that output of like Mark and CEO ringing you. People in that organisations are much more open to that. Mentor coaches, to have someone on the hotline on there, whereas us down in the middle management arena, it's less common. But I think as a PM, it can be a very lonely place,
It is.
because the team you've got is temporary. So whilst you can build a relationship, you can build brilliant relationships and brilliant teams, it's very transitory. Um, it's that place of where your peers, they're very, there's a relationship between what you're doing with your peers, but you're very disjointed from each other. You can't turn, if you've got a bunch of people doing product marketing, for example, you've got a product marketing thing going on, you need someone who's in that to do it. You can kind of join together and work on it. With a project, it's less, I find it's less, not cross-functional, but I don't know, it's just you're there, you're the one, it's your fault if it all goes wrong, basically.
Yeah.
And
It's leadership.
yeah, and then just getting that mentorship to make you realise that actually there are that confidence is a lot of it sometimes, isn't it? And being able to just say to someone like you said to Mark there, it was like, well, if you do this, this, and this, you may be able to pin them down a bit better and hold them to account without Because sometimes you look at something like that and you're thinking, well, am I just being unreasonable at trying to get an answer? Is it more complicated? Like those digging down conversations are just so powerful.
Yeah. Anytime I work with somebody, anytime I'm, in front of the camera teaching, um, doing one-on-one, like the three things that I have a goal for. Number one is to bring clarity. Like, let's get clear on what's going on. Let's get clear on what you're saying and what your approach is. And then the second goal is to help you increase that confidence. Because let's face it, we will lose our confidence when it comes to project management, company, corporate leadership, just even small business leadership. This even happens within your own family structure, right? So clarity, confidence, and when you start getting those things dialed in, then we take a look at cohesion, right? The 3 C's, right? Clarity, confidence, because when you have those two things, that's when you really start building the cohesion within your team, within whatever project that you're working with. And a lot of people are trying to go for cohesion, but they have zero confidence and, it's a foggy day. They have like no clarity of anything. So that's the goal: clarity, confidence, and cohesion. That doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be on a, unicorn riding through the clouded fields of success. That just simply means that you're going to be able to navigate every challenge better that comes your way. And that's the goal, right? Getting to that endpoint faster and saving money.
Yeah, it just it's that. Yeah, clarity is such an important thing in everything we do. And sometimes we rush things and don't realize there isn't clarity. I think with the family, I have 2 daughters, clarity about what I want to happen and lead to an argument with my teenage daughter because they haven't clearly heard what I've asked to be done or set my expectations.
Yeah.
Then we can have a big fight and then we'll wake up and it'll be all right. But I think it's different zones and different switches within work. It's that I know when I've not been clear with what I expect of someone and when I expect it, and it's my whole thing with project management: who does what by when. Most of my action, my titles on my action logs has changed in the last 12 months because somebody had description, name of an assigned multitude, who, what, when. There, it's that. More clarity then.
Yeah.
I think kind of try to drive those sort of things. And
Yeah.
I'm just looking at the clock, and we're knocking on 57 minutes, and we haven't talked about a third of what I wanted to chat about. Because I look at your bio, and I'm like,
You
oh,
want to do a
wow,
rapid fire?
I want to talk about that. I want to talk about actually your Navy SEAL community, and you're talking about the naval stuff, and I imagine. But maybe we do that another time.
Yeah,
Um,
or I can hang. I'm happy to hang, and we can do rapid fire or whatever you want. I'm good.
I think was there anything that you wanted to cover that I didn't let you so far? That you
I
want
was
to mention?
really into our conversation. But here's what I will do. I will let people off the hook because I know some people like, okay, so what's this free thing that you're giving us? So the free gift, right?
Yeah,
So I have a course that I call Impact Scripts, and I give this course away for free because I want to see people win and be successful and start to get a sense of how they can navigate through these difficult conversations. Right? Give yourself some breath, give yourself, take the pressure off and build up some confidence. So it's very easy. If you go to my website, heybrenda.com, and you fill in your name, you're going to go ahead and put in your email address, and then there's a little spot that's going to say, what's the one thing that wowed you that you heard on this? And then it's immediately going to get you to enroll in the impact scripts. And it's available to you. Like I said, there's a bonus that's in there as well. We're not having you exchange your credit card for anything. It's just, this really is my gift to your listeners. And I've had a lot of people come back and tell me, like, holy cow, this really helped me out a great deal. And they're very interested as to what comes after that. So, yeah, Impact Scripts is very, very powerful stuff. I do it automatically I say these things all the time without even thinking about it.
so I've just jumped on there. Heybrenda.com, you said, yeah? And
Heybrenda.com.
Brenda Yeah, there you are. There's a picture of you on there, so I'll be filling my name in there and ping that across to you, and I'll
Love
put
it.
a link in there. But that's easy. But I like the Hey Brenda thing as well. Everyone's on the phone to you, Hey
Hey,
Brenda.
Brenda hotline. That's what it is. I answer the phone. They're like, "Hey, Brenda," and I'm like, "Oh, here we go."
Aside from that, if people wanted to hear more, find out more information, what's the best way that they can get hold of you or get in touch?
Yeah, actually, the very first step would be to go to the Hey Brenda hotline, heybrendawebsite.com. The other thing is that you can also reach me. Like, I'm on all the social media channels, and it's Brenda Neckvatal. Heybrenda.com is just way easier than brendaneckvatal.com, but I do have that website out there. If somebody wanted to, talk to me about potential coaching or even speaking, that's at brendaneckvatal.com, and they can see my name right there. But yeah, I'm on all the social channels and all that stuff. So LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok,
Brilliant.
Twitter.
Well, Brenda, thank you for so much time, and Head of Security for their contribution as well.
He's done a good job, hasn't he?
Yeah. And yeah, that's been fascinating, and I'm sure that there's definitely for me a few nuggets in there that I'm going to try and implement over the coming days and weeks and months and years, hopefully. Um, so you have a wonderful rest of your day, and
Thank
thanks
you.
very much.
Well, thank you for having me. I really, really, really enjoyed this. This was fun.
Brilliant, me too. Cheers. So I have a number of sponsors, affiliate links in the way that it's set up that have kindly allowed me to share their services. Really, the first one is Mike Clayton, and Mike runs online PM courses, and it is a great resource for getting those fundamentals of project management trained, reasonably priced, and Mike presents it in an accessible and clear manner. You can check out some of his videos on his YouTube channel and kind of give you a view of where they are. But the code for that, if you go to nigelcreaser.com/online PM courses, all one word, lowercase, that'll redirect you to it. There's very different levels that you can buy. You can buy individual courses, you can buy pathways as well if you like, and I get a kickback off those. Mike kindly shares me that, so if you do jump on and use it, I hope you find it really useful. I think he has money back guarantees and things like that as well, so there's very limited risk on that, so jump on that. And that again, it's nigelcreaser.com/online PM courses, and enjoy.